Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Learning to Glow podcast. It is going to be a solo episode today, and I just wanted to share what I've been learning here about blood sugar balance. And I always share what I'm doing or what I'm into and what's been helping me with all of you. And recently, I'm actually still reading it, but I'm reading this book from Dr. Casey Means. It's called Good Energy. She's a doctor who is sharing her experience in the medical field and sort of why she left, why she started her own practice, and how her views have changed about health since she was practicing medicine. And it's excellent so far. I really recommend it. And she talked about so many topics. I'll talk about a few of them here later, but one of the areas that I was really interested in and that I've been hearing more about online is blood sugar and how blood sugar can spike. And as someone with no issues, like my numbers are good, I still wanted to make sure I was doing all that I can from a lifestyle and diet perspective, just to make sure I'm not spiking my levels, because you can see a lot of negative things can happen when you're dealing with chronic blood sugar spikes, and not even in people who are diabetic, but just like, a more healthy population who can make a few tweaks. And that's what I want to make sure for myself. I'm always interested in trying to feel better, get more energy, and all of those things. So that is sort of what I've been really diving into lately. I want to share what I'm doing, what has worked, the data that I've gotten from it, and why we want to strive for a blood sugar balance. When our blood sugar spikes, we can experience a lot of symptoms. And one of the biggest ones is fatigue. If you've ever had a meal and then you felt like you needed to take a nap, you know what I'm talking about. Chronic spikes can really lead to health issues, and over time it can lead to disease. So, diabetes, kidney disease, there are certain things that will cause our blood sugar to spike. Eating any meal will usually raise your blood sugar, but certain foods will have more of a significant spike. And that's what we sort of want to stay away from. We want to be more balanced in the middle. We don't want to go too high up or too high down or too low. So a lot of carbs are foods high in sugar and carbs. Also, the time of day that you eat, which I didn't know that could affect it. Stress is a big one. This really affects, and I also didn't know, I know stress affects everything, but it really affects our blood sugar levels. And dehydration, so not having enough water. There are a few things that I've been learning about and implementing to make sure that I stay balanced. And I know that these things are working for me because I've been testing them. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to my health, and I always want to try everything. So I decided to get a continuous blood glucose monitor to test basically if I'm having spikes, when I'm having them, what's causing it, and if I'm helping or spiking my blood sugar. And it hasn't even been a full week yet, but I can already see the data. You get it right away because it's a patch on my arm, and it's continually taking my blood and measuring it. So I've gotten some really great feedback already, and I want to share. There are 6 things that you can do to help balance your blood sugar. I'm doing most of them, and there's probably more than this, but these are the ones that through my research that I have found that really work for other people and that have been working for me. So in this episode, I want to share these 6 things that I'm doing and what has been working. So the number one is to have a savory breakfast. And this is something that I've been doing for a long time. I'm not really a sweet breakfast person, but I specifically wanted to test the breakfast that I've been eating almost every day, most days actually, and see if that was a good breakfast for me for as far as my blood sugar goes. And it's been amazing. The one that I really like is I like Greek yogurt. I've talked about that on the podcast before, but I love Greek yogurt. I actually do pumpkin seeds and flaxseed, like a tablespoon of each. And then I usually do a couple tablespoons of some fruit. I usually do pomegranate seeds. I also love kiwi. And those are kind of my go-to for or berries. I love like blackberries, raspberries. And I'll top that, mix it all together, and then I add cinnamon to the top of my yogurt. I also, because I'm really focusing on protein as well, I love to add to this breakfast chicken sausage. I literally just buy, there's like a giant organic chicken sausage frozen at Costco. And I have those two things for breakfast. It's like over 30 grams of protein. It's great to start the day. It fills me up and it has lots of fiber. So I just think that I was like hopeful that that would be a breakfast that didn't spike my blood sugar. And it's been really, really good. And number two is actually part of number one, but adding in cinnamon to your food, into your diet, actually helps stabilize blood sugar. So I didn't even realize that it helped, but I have been doing that and adding cinnamon into food since Nagina. She was on my episode 73. She came onto the podcast and she's Indian, and she talks about how using spices can really help with metabolic boosting, like foods that are metabolic boosting. So that's what she talked about in her episode. And cinnamon was one of them. And I was like, oh, I should start doing that. And I put cinnamon in my coffee and I top it on my yogurt. And if I have cottage cheese, I put it on my cottage cheese. So I'm really glad to know that that is something that you can do to help with the blood sugar. And it tastes so good too. My favorite thing is putting it in my coffee. Number three is don't eat naked carbs. And that just means if you're going to eat carbs, try to pair it with something like fat or protein, and then you will have less of a spike. There's a lady that I follow, and she talks about blood sugar balance all the time. And she talks about when you go to a restaurant, you get like a bag of chips or a bowl of chips. If you're at a Mexican restaurant or if you're at an Italian restaurant, you get like a big bowl of bread. And she's like, that's not ideal in the order that you eat it because it will spike your blood sugar. So either have like put butter on it or, have some type of fat or protein so that you're not eating like what she calls naked carbs. The other thing that you can do is number 4, which is adding vinegar to your foods. Specifically, you can add it to your water. So I've been putting apple cider as like a pre-dinner drink. I use this for this purpose. I learned about this a few months ago. And you can also put vinegar, make vinaigrettes, make for your salad dressing. Doesn't matter what type of vinegar. I've been using apple cider vinegar, and this is really strong. So some people wouldn't like it the way I drink it, but you could do like a sweetener too. You have to be careful with that because that can spike your blood sugar. But you can do like a couple drops of stevia, lemon juice, water, your apple cider vinegar. I think it tastes pretty good, but I don't know. I think that's something that you have to play around with. But if you don't like that type of a drink, you can do salad dressing. But just getting some vinegar into your diet throughout the day, I think preferably before meals, is a great tip for balance. And number 5 is eating vegetables first, then proteins and carbs. So it's kind of like what I was talking about with the naked carbs. But when you get a plate and you're eating dinner, for example, and you have steak and potatoes and broccoli, they're recommending broccoli, meat, and then your potatoes. Now, I'm not going to lie. I have known about this one for a while. I do not have the patience for this one. I eat however I want when it comes to sitting down at dinner. I don't eat one thing first and then the next thing, I don't do that. I just eat whatever I feel like, and I kind of mix it all together throughout my meal. So based on what my monitor has been telling me about my dinners, it hasn't been a problem. I don't know if it's because I've been really good with my apple cider vinegar drink, but my blood sugar has not spiked, and I'm not eating like I'm not eating in this way. I'm not eating in that order specifically. But I'm also like, I don't eat a ton of carbs at dinner. I eat potatoes. I like sweet potatoes. I like, a lot of times, instead of rice, I do cauliflower rice. So I do have rice from time to time, but I don't eat a lot of rice. So if I'm eating dinner, I usually kind of minimize how much carbs or like grains I'm eating anyways. So maybe that has something to do with it too. But I do love roasted potatoes. It's like my favorite thing. So if I'm making roasted potatoes for dinner, I tend to eat whatever I want of those because they're delicious. So anyways, I eat however I want when it comes to this, but if you're struggling with some of the symptoms of blood sugar spikes, you can try this. Like, try whatever resonates with you. You don't need to try them all, but if you're having symptoms or you're feeling really, really tired after a meal, try some of this and see if it helps. And you don't have to get a blood sugar monitor to get this data. You can pay attention to how you feel after meals and if you're having any symptoms. That is going to teach you a lot. You'll learn a lot just by doing that. And you can start with some of these tips and see if they help. And just play around. It's all an experiment, and it's not to be stressed out, and not like one more thing that we have to try to remember, because I get like that all the time. It's like, oh gosh, now here's another thing I have to remember when it comes to my diet. But I think in the long run, there's some really easy things we can do here to make a nice impact. And the sixth tip is try not to eat too late. So this is very interesting. So studies have shown that you can eat the same meal, and if it's later in the night, the blood sugar will tend to spike more. If you get meals in before it gets too late, and you have that break between eating and sleeping, that's just going to help your sleep too. There's a lot of benefits for this. And again, I struggle with this sometimes. Sometimes I get home too late and I haven't eaten dinner, and I'm not going to skip a meal. Like, if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. But I do find that if I can eat earlier, I do sleep better. I do feel better. So that's something to keep in mind. Or if you're doing a lot of late night snacking and it's affecting your blood sugar or your sleep, that's something to think about. And maybe what you eat too. It's so, a lot of this blood sugar balance, a lot of these tips are not just what we're eating, it's kind of how we're eating and when we're eating and things like that. So it's all, you can take it all into account, and we don't have to be perfect, but we can make improvements here and there and as we can. A bonus tip, because I mentioned it before, is the stress. Watch the stress. Studies have shown that stressful situations or having chronic stress absolutely lead to blood sugar spikes. And stress is inevitable, but having some tools in your toolbox for stress reduction is so important. And it's literally so important for everything else too. We know that, and we've talked about this. Like, being chronically stressed is very, very taxing on everything in our lives and our health. So having some ways that we can help reduce that, or have mindfulness practices, whatever it takes to sort of minimize that's going to help here in this situation as well. So those are my tips for blood sugar balance and what I've been doing. I will update you. I think in a few days it'll be the full 7 days, my first week, and I'm doing a month of this. I'm going to see how even your workouts and your time of day and your sleep, all of that will affect your blood sugar. And it's funny, the first night, this particular monitor that I got is called Levels, and it comes with the monitor, and then it also has an app. So they are tied together and the data is downloaded into the app. And it's really great. You can actually use the app to enter your meals, so you can see when something has spiked. What did you eat? Like, what was happening during that situation? and it's very clear, it's easy to use and all of that. And the first night I forgot to put my phone on do not disturb, and I had like 2 spikes in the middle of the night, and I was like, what the heck? Like I got a notification that my blood sugar had spiked, and I was like, okay, like I'm sleeping, like why is it spiking? But then you have to go back to like the day before, what was the last thing I ate? I wonder if I had a dream or something too, because it was kind of random when it happened. And last night, or actually this morning, I got my little, it's like a daily report of how your blood sugar levels were. And I had 0 spikes. And the first day that I did it, I had 4 spikes. I love to have some data and to see, okay, this worked, this didn't work. I shouldn't do that again. Or maybe I had, dessert that night or whatever. And it's not that it's okay if our blood sugar spikes, but it's just interesting to know. And like the days where I'm drinking my vinegar water before I eat dinner, I wonder if I'll have less of a spike and things like that. So I like to see the progress too, because I can know for sure, like that breakfast that I ate and the time that I'm eating it, that works. That works for me. And that's something that's going to keep my blood sugar happy. But I love learning about these things. And, I really didn't know much about blood sugar balance before. I knew some things, but really trying to get as much information as I can in my health journey, it gives me more power to make the decisions that are going to help my body and my health overall. And as far as the book goes, I recommend this book if you are interested in. She gives a lot of examples of what to eat to kind of stay healthy and really the good energy. She's talking about our cells. She breaks down things so it's easy to understand, but she really gets into, the mitochondria and how our cells need to be healthy, what a lot of disease is caused from, which is, chronic inflammation, and how these little things are like definitely little alarms that we are going down a path that could lead to some more severe chronic illness later down the line. And her mom had cancer, and she would have been considered pretty healthy when she went to her annual visits, but there was underlying conditions that there were signs basically, and there were red flags. So she talks about what to look out for so that we can stay as healthy as we can, and some really interesting things that she talked about that I knew a little bit about, you know, our medical studies and how certain studies are funded by companies that are the food industry, and how we have to really do our own research here. We can't always take these studies for face value, because one of the studies had said how Lucky Charms was a better breakfast option than like eggs and bacon, saying that there was too much saturated fat in the eggs and bacon. And obviously, Lucky Charms is all sugar with a bunch of, artificial color. And that's just not accurate. But the problem is that they take those studies with our health agencies and our government, and they have recommendations for our children and the food and nutrition guidelines. So those studies end up making policy, and that's what is really scary, because that's when our pediatricians, our doctors are telling us, oh, this is what you should do, because those are the new guidelines based on studies that were funded by the food companies. So there are some really great insights from the doctor when it comes to the medical system. Not always fun to realize, but again, like, we're here to make our own decisions. We have to do that from a place of being informed, and we have to know that that's the reality of the system that we live in this country. So we do have to be our own advocates, and that goes for our health. It goes for what we put into our bodies and what we buy at the grocery store. So as frustrating as that can be for me and for so many people, I'd rather know than not. So I hope this episode helps. I don't know if you guys have been interested or learning about this topic, but it's definitely something that I am glad I've learned about. And I'm sure that I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Would you do these things, these tips that I've shared? Do you already do them? Let me know. And I hope you guys have a really great week. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.